Ladies and gentlemen, after 5 rounds, we go to the judges' scorecards for a decision. All 3 judges score this contest 48-46 for the winner by unanimous decision and new UFC middleweight champion of the world, Paulo The Eraser Costa.
If you look forward to the Israel Adesanya vs Paulo Costa fight, then be sure to show this by smashing the like button. Thank you for joining me once again, and welcome back to Keenan K TV. In today's video, we will be going over the 5 reasons why Paulo Costa will be able to defeat the Last Stylebender Israel Adesanya. And in an upcoming video, we will go over the 5 reasons why Adesanya will win. So be sure to stay notified by subscribing to my channel with the bell notifications turned on. And now with that being said, let's jump right into the video. The Eraser Paulo Costa has been able to earn that nickname by going through everybody that stood in his way in the middleweight division. And throughout that run, one key component always stuck out with a fighter like Paulo Costa, who has the size that he has, and that was his ability to just go through everybody with a lot of sheer brute strength. But over the years, he has developed a lot of skills that accompany that relentlessness. With the pure weight advantage he has come fight night, he has always been able to absorb a lot of damage from his opponents. But now, he has also added a lot of skills to his offensive game that will accompany that relentlessness, and come fight night against Israel Adesanya, I believe that we will see a peak performance from a very young Paulo Costa. And with his youth and undefeated record, he has been a foreigner when it comes to losing. And with that, I believe that come fight night, if it so happens to be that he is in a losing situation, for example, his will not be broken, because he will not want to taste that defeat no matter what. As soon as a fighter loses, their entire mentality changes. And so going into a fight against Adesanya, it really has to be you or me that will go down. And I believe right now, that instinct of Paulo Costa is as high as it ever has been. Switching over to the second reason, we will see that Adesanya will be facing a very powerful fighter, arguably the most powerful he has fought. Yes, even though he has fought Yoel Romero, comparing the styles between Romero and Paulo Costa, you will see that Paulo is a lot more active with what he does and fights less in spurts compared to Yoel Romero. And so come fight night, Adesanya will be facing somebody with so much power that he's never faced before inside the UFC. Perhaps he has faced powerhouses in his kickboxing run, but when it comes to the UFC and those little gloves, a lot of punches can get through before you even know it. Adesanya will have to deal with freakish, unusual power from Paulo Costa. And then the real question becomes this: how much impact will it have mentally on Israel Adesanya? Now, in my opinion, when it comes to knocking out a fighter like Israel Adesanya, you will have to be not only a very powerful fighter, but more importantly, a very slick fighter that can set a trap that Adesanya can walk into. Now, I'm not saying that on the back foot, Paulo Costa can't launch a big right and drop him. If the sequence presents itself, that could most likely happen, but that is just the point, the big if. So when it comes to a fighter like Paulo Costa, he's not going to be able to time him, counter him, and do things of that nature, and go for him as well, because he's not that fighter. So he has to work with what he has, and he has to close in that gap, which ties into our third reason, Paulo Costa's kicking game. Even though Paulo Costa has always been going at the opponents very close up against the fence, and that is probably where the most damage has been done against most of his opponents, to be able to get the fight there in the first place is the most important part for Paulo Costa. His kicks to the body come into play, his head kicks, his leg kicks. From a long range, Israel Adesanya will have the advantage. He has about 8 inches in reach advantage over Paulo Costa and 4 inches in height. So Paulo Costa from the long range, I personally don't even believe that Paulo Costa himself thinks that he can fight at that range, just pure boxing. And that is why I believe immediately from the get-go, offensively, he will come forward and apply a lot of kicks. Because you cannot really just only evade a kick. For example, if the kick comes up high, yeah, sure, you can lean back, but you're gonna have to give a lot of ground up. And let's just say Paulo Costa doesn't decide to kick Adesanya to the head, but instead to the body, then he has no other option but to block him, and from there he has a very stationary target for a split second. And in those split seconds, Paulo Costa has to make the most out of his range, which ties in with our fourth reason, which is Costa's ability to cut off the ring. Against a fighter like Adesanya who will move around, that will be the most important part of his game. And so by utilizing the kicks and just walking down Adesanya, his ability, in my opinion, to have a stationary Adesanya is the highest that it has ever been amongst any of Adesanya's previous opponents. And that is why I believe Adesanya will have a very difficult time, especially early on in the fight, just having to earn their respect against a fighter like Paulo Costa. And as I said earlier, his relentlessness and his youth and his undefeated record mentality will be the driving force behind Paulo Costa's demeanor of not giving Adesanya any respect. And that is the most important part in a fighter like Paulo Costa. Because if you have too much respect for your opponent, you would like to just kind of warm up to the fight and just tap around and just kind of smooth into the fight because, you know, it is 5 rounds. I don't think that will happen with Paulo Costa. And that is a very difficult opposition to have for Adesanya because he has always been the fighter that can control the tempo, control the opponent, control the range. Right now, he has a very hard opponent to control, and that is where uncertainty kicks in because as soon as Adesanya loses that control, what will happen? Throughout the majority of his run at the UFC, we haven't really seen him lose control ever, really. Even against guys who try to be in control of the tempo like Derek Brunson, they just got countered left and right. And I believe right now, if it just so happens to be that Paulo Costa does get countered, especially early on, I don't think it will faze him that much because you would have to really think of how Adesanya will be able to catch Paulo Costa. Where will he catch him and what way will he catch him? Probably if he were to catch him, it is close up against the fence on the back foot and moving back. That is what I presume Adesanya being able to catch, or counter I should say, Paulo Costa at. But then the problem becomes this: when it comes to Paulo Costa, he's not a fighter that will throw one big shot at a time and then leave you alone. That is just the main problem that I believe Paulo Costa poses on Israel Adesanya. For example, Kelvin Gastelum, Robert Whittaker, Yoel Romero, Marvin Vettori, all these guys, they would throw one big shot at a time and then kind of back off and see if they have the range down. That is just not going to happen. Adesanya will have the range on you at all times. That is just something that you will have to accept and not just try and fight that. You know, don't fight Adesanya's fight. Fight your fight. But the problem with them fighting their fight is just that they fight the same way Adesanya fights, but Adesanya just does it way better. And so when you have a fighter in Paulo Costa who fights his own fight, then you will have a real fight at your hands. And that is why Paulo Costa has a great chance of winning. So moving over to the final reason why Paulo Costa can win this fight, it will come down to body punches. We have established the relentlessness. We have established the power, kicks, and cutting off the ring. And now we will have a supposed stationary Israel Adesanya for the most part. What will happen then? Paulo Costa has tremendous body work. He will go to the body, he will dig down deep, and he will punch the air out of you. And in a 5-round fight against a seasoned veteran champion in Israel Adesanya, that is probably the best thing that he can do. He can go about this in 2 ways. He can go about it in 1 or 2 rounds and just go all out and hope for the best, which is a very good game plan in my opinion. Or take it a little bit slower and try to work in spots, but I think going to the body immediately is just very important. And the more he can go to the body, the more he can go to the legs, and the more he can take away the ability, mobility, and stamina of Adesanya, the better he can go in there and finally get that knockout punch. Because when it comes to Paulo Costa, he's not a big one-hitter quitter. He just accumulates a lot of damage and then the opponent just crumbles. Against Adesanya, before he crumbles, before he gets to even take a lot of damage, you will have to first stop him from moving because he will always move and always be dynamic. And I believe that is something that Paulo Costa will have to figure out come fight night. Because these were only the 5 reasons why Paulo Costa can win, and in time, we shall all know the truth. For now, leave in the comment section down below who you think will win come fight night. And as always, I have been Keenan from Keenan KTV, signing off. Later.